Cryptos, monetary policy. A decentralized monetary system complementing and disrupting the status quo. I'm going to dig into cryptos with Michael and Manuel, but with GAUGECASH.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Mike. My name's Michael Casey. I'm wearing two hats here, actually. So I'm here as part of the Project Liberty team. Frank McCourt later on will be giving a keynote, talking about the book, amongst other things, that he and I have written called Our Biggest Fight, which is all about the desperate need to fix a broken internet and what we can do about it. And we'll be signing some books during the networking session later on today, and also at a bookstore later today. So that's that hat. My other hat is as a long-time financial journalist and somebody involved in also the crypto space. I was, until very recently, the chief content officer at CoinDesk, which is the leading publication covering Bitcoin, crypto, the blockchain world. But when Bruce suggested that I do this panel, he couldn't have chosen something to me that was like more fitting, because my career as a journalist actually began as somebody that are deeply covering foreign exchange. I've lived in Argentina for 6 years, covered the IMF. I pretty much was obsessed with exchange rate volatility and the problems of the global economy that come with that. Some of the issues that actually came up in the previous panel, talking about what happens to the dollar in these moments of uncertainty and how does that impact the entire world. I kind of was all over that. So Bruce, you did a good job of really giving me something very nerdy to deal in with, because this topic actually combines that history with my other one, which is the crypto world. So I've had a fascinating conversation with Manuel, and we're going to break this all down for you. I will say it is rather complicated, right? This is not something that if you don't fully understand. I mean, a lot of you, I think, will probably understand the foreign exchange implications of this and the volatility questions we're trying to solve. But the crypto part, it's something that you got to familiarize with. It's a different way of thinking in some respects about where stability and decentralization and so forth come from. So I would suggest, since we can't do slides here, that if you really want to dig more into this, have a word to Manuel afterwards. Get him to give you some visualizations. It's a useful way to get your head around what we're dealing with here. But enough of that, Manuel. Why don't we turn to you?
So
what
now? There is still going on in the world what is called big debt crisis in the last 50 years. In the book of Ray Dalio, he mentioned 48. So we have still Argentina, Venezuela, Lebanon, Egypt, so on and so forth. So with this technology, the question was, can we solve this problem that has to do with protection about hyperinflation, even inflation, just using technology? We found an answer that is yes. And in theoretical economics, that is called hard monetary system. And I introduced the theoretical solution in a conference in Microsoft in 2019. It was very well received by very high-level people now that are in the blockchain space. And then we took almost 5 years to implement the whole solution. So now it was launched last year for everyone in the world to use for free. So we are very excited. This is the first time in an event of this caliber that we are announcing the solution, right? So that's a little bit of the
So let's try to start to break down the solution, right? So I think most people think in dollars. That's our kind of lingua franca of the global economy, and so we think of the dollar as a stable thing. Doesn't change, right? That's not true. Certainly not if you're Argentine, Mexican or Argentine, or anywhere else for that matter, because there's always, as you would all know, there's actually two pieces to an exchange rate, and in fact, dollars, as we've discovered in the past couple of years here in the United States, are not stable, right? In terms of the cost of houses or anything you're buying, this thing is moving around. So the idea that that's our source of stability is a challenge. And as I said, I've lived in Argentina. I was very, very interested in this problem. That some of you may have heard the expression, when the US gets a cold, the rest of the world gets pneumonia, right? And so when we have these big extreme moments, and I wrote a book called The Unfair Trade at the moment of the financial crisis that showed how when these crises happen, the fallout in the rest of the world from a rising dollar is extreme. Inflation, and it goes the other way around as well. When it's a falling dollar and you get all that sort of inflows of hot money and everything else. So you're trying to get off that drug, right? How?
Well, we needed to do two things, basically. One is the first question was, okay, how can we decentralize the value of the pegging to the US dollar? From the point of view of blockchain, there are something called stable coins, and they are pegged to the US dollar, so it's the same problem. And actually backwards, because they have a bank that is backing, and we don't know how, these stable coins in a very traditional fashion. And blockchain is not built like that. It has another completely ethos, but not ethos in the sense of philosophy, ethos in the code, right? Like you can check and go on there and see what's going on in there for everyone.
Right, let's just break that down quickly. Like a classic stablecoin traditional reserve model is somebody stands up and says, I've got X number of dollars in Vault, and here's X number of tokens against that, and I'm going to represent that and put it on a blockchain. The problem of that being that you now have to trust that entity to hold those, right? That's against the blockchain ethos. You're supposed to trust the math, not the institution, right?
And the largest one, which is USDT, is a bank in Hong Kong, which is worse because now we have USDC, which is based here. At least if something goes wrong, then
it's
somebody
audited.
Can bail it out, right? So how do we decentralize a value? So I will put you a simple example. If you have the Euro USD and then the pound to USD, and you make just a simple average, then you will get another number. That new number, I'm telling you for sure that you can price goods and services in a very good way going forward, but then it doesn't pertain to any central bank, but inherits the monetary policy of these three countries, right? So what we did is we went all the way, and there are some measurements by the Bank of International Settlements in which we know which are the most currencies traded in the world. Of course, the USD is number one, Euro second, Yen third, but then we put the 35 that we put, so that it could be really global. The other aspect is the weighted average that we created is non-random weighted average. I will not get into details, but it's not that hard if somebody wants to understand it. And then we put another two ingredients to the index, which is what happens if a currency collapses, right? Like Argentina. Well, the index takes into consideration that and moves the weight. And then another part is what happens if the whole world collapses? Then the value of the index converges to face value. So it has all the properties to protect your wealth, basically. And in top of that, we added a 2% compounding growth to protect against inflation. Where this number comes from? Well, if you check in the World Bank, the growth at GDP level is around that 2%. So we need to start thinking globally, and we put that. But at the end, this is just a number. It's an index, and then we work with a company called, we partner with a project called Chainlink, which they do something that in the Web3 space called oracles, which is pretty sophisticated, which is bringing data feed from the real world and then printed in the blockchain in a decentralized way, so nobody can tamper with that value.
Okay.
Right? So we work in that for 3 years.
So this is the first starting point for this conversation. Let's deal with that, right? I think most people can probably get their heads around that. This is by creating a weighted average across 35 different currencies, you've now got a more diversified set of price movements. You get more stability out of that, right? That's not particularly complicated. What you then led us into is a bit more of a slightly more complicated crypto concept, which is the idea of an oracle. Why does this matter? Because, again, we're talking about an environment of having to trust. Because if that feed is going to come into a mathematical equation like the one that Manuel and his team have created, you're going to want to make sure that the feed is not being tampered with, right? That somebody else is not manipulating that for their own interests. And that's where this technology called oracles, created the most sort of widely used of which is by this company called Chainlink, is really important because it's a trusted, you can trust it without having to trust Chainlink itself. It's a what in crypto world we say trustless, which is a very dangerous word because it sounds like it's bad, but in fact it is good. You can rely on this number not being tampered with. So now we've got the feed coming in from the 35 different currencies from trusted price feeds around the world, giving you this average, plus all of the 2% and various other things, and now you've got this number that we all agree is the stability thing, right? Okay, good.
And just to add a comment, in our website you can check the historical behavior. So it's proven that it's supposed to work as it is.
Okay, but we have another problem, and this is where this, again, becomes a really interesting mathematical issue and something that the crypto world, Satoshi Nakamoto, looked to solve. Now we're going to trust these guys, right? Because they're going to have a token, a currency, GAU, right?
Right.
That is going to become the unit of exchange that we want the world to start using when they're selling cars or widgets or surfboards or whatever around the world, right? And how do we know that you guys aren't, doing something untoward with that money, that you're not taking it for yourselves and paying yourselves in expensive yachts and whatever else, right? How do we trust that this entire system with this price feed is going to consistently behave in the way that you have to, so that the tokens themselves can be trusted?
Right. So we needed to create another token. And this token has a property of scarcity, which some blockchains has that property. Bitcoin is the case, Ethereum, Solana, Link, Polygon, Avalanche, and so on. So we can use that property to make self-reinforcing economic system. I will leave it like that. But to answer the question is, this is built, again, at the level of smart contracts. Smart contracts is just code, right? So there's a protocol. Sometimes I would like to get out of the way, like algorithmic and mathematics. A protocol is something, it's like what you use in your car every day, right? For example, if you have these systems in which, this is a pretty old system, like you turn on the light, and with a sensor catches if the sun is out or not, and then it turn it off or turn it on, right? And you trust it. Is that, well, how does it work? Well, it's a computer. It's quite simple.
It performs according to code every single time. It's a set of rules. I like to think of the protocol as a set of rules for computers to follow, and they do it every time. That's why the internet works, by the way. It's got protocols underneath it that make sure that all the computers are talking to each other with the same language. Yeah.
Right. So with this second token and this theoretical, which is the innovation is in the theoretical aspect of what is called hard monetary system, with these properties of blockchain and some assets and what we created with the index and so on, we put it together in a smart contract or in a set of smart contracts in which people can check that their money is there, right? So just to put another example, what happened with this exchange FTX that collapses is because there's something that you should have in your if you use crypto, your private key, right? Which is your direct access to your money. When you are using a centralized exchange like FTX, then they can do whatever they want and they can collapse, in this case by leverage. In this case, now they are saying, okay, we have proof of reserves. We have certain amount of Bitcoin and dollars and Ethereum and so on. But how can I see that in the blockchain, right? I want to see them in the smart contracts. And that's because people think that it's so hard. You just open something that is called Etherscan and you can check and the money is there. They don't put it there. So I don't know why. See, this technology is about that. So this protocol is transparent for the public to watch that your money is there, right? And nobody can tamper with that.
Right. And with smart contracts, you have the capacity to create this kind of escrow type environments and locks that essentially, you know, you think of an escrow agent as a trustee. You have to trust the trustee to look after the money. This is a piece of computer code that is locking it up and literally mathematically cannot be opened.
Right.
And that is part of, this is a very important concept for anything about blockchains. It's now code that is setting the rules around how value is managed and who's not. And therefore, in this case, it's very different from, I love the FTX example, right? Because most people think, oh, crypto is full of scams, crypto is full of, FTX is the antithesis of what crypto is supposed to be. Like it's literally a custodian looking after your money and they're doing a bunch of shady things here and there. A decentralized exchange, smart contract based, is very, very different. However, blockchains have varying degrees of their own security, right? I mean, it's widely understood and recognized that Bitcoin is the most decentralized blockchain in the world, and people, including the SEC chairman, Gary Gensler, recognize that it cannot be tampered with and is therefore treated as a commodity rather than a security. And then you've got this spectrum, and Ethereum is widely regarded to be very close to being that, maybe it's not. And then we go down the spectrum. So you're working with Ethereum in the sense that you're using Polygon, which is it's what we call
Layer 2.
It's a layer 2. It's a separate blockchain that is connecting to Ethereum, and it's extremely well regarded as well. However, you know, there is a potential under its consensus mechanism, it's known as proof of stake. One could argue, if there were to be a big enough player, and you guys, if you succeed, could well become a very big player, or some of your investors or anybody else who'd in GAO, to come in and manipulate that underlying part of the blockchain, right?
Right.
What do you say to that?
Well, we want to follow the ethos of blockchain in the sense of we're not talking here about what we want to do, but what are the incentives to do it. So if you are familiar with Bitcoin, how it works, which is quite complicated in the sense of miners and incentives for them, but they are not putting his computer power for free. They want to obtain something. So that is brilliant because it's based in something that is called in mathematics game theory, right? Ethereum is the same. Bitcoin is the first peer-to-peer cash system. Ethereum is the first decentralized computer. Polygon is a layer 2, meaning more fast or faster, etc. It's like the phone industry with a speed of 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G is scaling, right? That hasn't stopped. But all these mechanisms of proof of stake, proof of work, in the case of Solana, proof of history, they are very, very profound mathematical and sophisticated cryptography mechanisms to ensure that the whole thing will not fall out. And the whole purpose is that you benefit from acting honestly. It's money given to you. So the analogy is like, okay, let's go and rob a bank, right? I tell Mike, okay, let's go and rob a bank.
Sure, I'm in.
And then I come and say, okay, how much money do we need to rob the bank? And how much money are we going to get? Well, there's $1 million in the bank. And then I tell you, well, it will cost $2 million to steal it, right? Well, it's stupid, right? Well, that's exactly the incentive behind Bitcoin, Ethereum to act honestly. It doesn't make sense to attack it. Right. Because it's more expensive.
Except if you have an ulterior motive, right? And like, let's imagine that the biggest holder of GAO is not, you know, this widespread of, you know, trading companies and commodity investors and you know, makers of goods and services, or
Right.
who's not necessarily going to have his interests
Right.
aligned with the stability of the system, right? These are the sorts of things that matter. So I suppose my next question, we've only got 3 minutes left, and I was hoping to get to questions, but I kind of figured this would happen. This is a complicated process, and I want to talk through it systematically, so unfortunately we're not going to have time for that. What's your strategy for getting people to participate? And maybe in summary, therefore, what's your message to these guys? Because it would seem to me that to get all this game theory and everything to work in its most ideal form, you want as broad a spread as possible, as much money as possible, but also diversely spread. How are you going to get human beings and companies and everyone to get into this thing? Because it's a radically different way of thinking about how money should move around the world.
Right. Well, in the first part, in the transactional part, in the monetary system part, and protecting your wealth, there is a real need in the world. For example, non-profits. You want to send $100 to a person in Ukraine that is in the war, and then you SWIFT, and they charge you $60. It doesn't make sense. Well, it makes sense for them, but like, not for you. So there are many use cases in which this solves real problems. The other one, obviously, inflation and hyperinflation. So it's a need. So there's a need of.
I think it's interesting, like, and I think sometimes Americans don't understand outside of the United States how big a need it is. A Mexican understands, an Argentine understands, a Turk understands, right? This is the reality. Unstable money is an integral part of many people's daily lives.
Exactly. And the other part is investors. Now you can think, if you read the other book of Ray Dalio, the Changing World, he explains how reserve currencies come to life and then they come in cycles and so on and so forth. For the first time in history, we have the technology for investors of all parts of the world to benefit for the business of being a central bank, let's say, in a decentralized way. So it's very powerful because being the reserve currency has a lot of benefits as a business.
Yeah, it will raise interesting questions if you succeed with the powers that be. Again, this conversation, the previous panel was all about the politics of what we're facing right now. And we know what happened to Libra, right? Libra was different, but I think we should just maybe on that note, like, make a distinction, right? Because Facebook was coming in, whatever it is, however many billions of users, it was one thing for a massive social media platform to step in and say, we are going to run the world's money. It's different when you're a startup like you guys, and yet you need to build that critical mass. So how do you want people to get involved if you think that they can help?
This is not MVP or whatever. The technology is ready. We can make transactions. It works. When you see it in real life, it's magic. And if you want to learn more, go to our website and just participate. I mean, it's not that hard.
All right, but you've got a demo you can give people. You've got the app there. You've got some slides to show you the math and everything else.
And it's released around the world. And the other thing that we're very proud is, like, it's available in the App Store, in the Google Play Store, because we want to be censorship-free. The app can be run in the browser and in any device in the world. So literally, say, forward thinking towards the future.
So it's a huge vision. Do we have time for? We're getting hands up. I think I need to probably be. We're out of time, I think, though, right? So should I attack that? All right, we have run over time, and I apologize for that. But I did want to get some of the questions because it is complicated. So thank you very much for your time, and a round of applause for Manuel.
Thank you, gentlemen. Break time. We'll be here back at 11 to talk about China.